Parents, just a quick note. 2 things. 1, if you want to turn today's Storytime video into a homeschooling English language arts video, check in the description box below and you will see a link to printable PDF worksheets. 2, if you are interested in starting your homeschooling journey, but you don't know where to start and you work full-time, I've got you covered. Check out my latest book, Indoctrination or Education, 6 action steps to successfully transition your child from public school to homeschool. Enjoy the show. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AUTHORized. I am your hostess, Christina Nicole Smith, and today's Storytime book is BOUKI Dances the Kokioko, a comical tale from Haiti, written by Diane Wolkstein and illustrated by JESSE SWEETWATER. Now, before I get into the book, I just want to ask you a quick favor and to hit that like button, please, if you are enjoying these episodes. And one more thing, don't laugh at my singing this one. It's going to require some singing. Let's begin. There once was a king of Haiti who loved dancing. He loved dancing more than anything else in the world. If he could, he would have invited dancers to perform for him every evening of the week. Unfortunately, he did not have enough money in his treasury to pay for them. One evening after dinner, the king was sitting in the garden and a song came to him. Kokioko, oh samba, ah la la, ah la la la. Kokioko, oh samba, ah la la, ah la la la. The king sang his song several times. Then, sniffing the soft night air, he stood up. Swaying back and forth, the king slowly began to make up a dance to accompany his song. Kokioko, oh samba, now I dance like this. Samba, oh, samba, ah, samba dance. The king moved his chest from side to side. Next, he added his arms and hips. When it came to samba dance, he clapped his hands and turned in a circle. The king was very pleased with his dance. No dancer could make up such a wonderful dance, he thought. But, of course, there are always those who think they can do anything. Just then, the king understood how he could continue to watch dancing every night while keeping his treasury full. The next morning, the king announced that he would pay 5,000 gourds to anyone who could dance the kokioko. No one had any idea what the kokioko was, but that evening a long line of dancers waited outside the palace, hoping they might be able to guess the steps of the king's dance. That night, the king saw some of the most splendid dancing he had ever seen, and all for free. For no one was able to guess the steps of the kokioko. The next night it was the same thing, and the night after that. Once a young woman happened to do the first steps of the kokioko, swaying her chest to the left and then to the right. The king sat up in excitement. But then the woman clapped in the second section instead of during samba dance. Another time a young man moved his chest, arms, and hips as the king had done, but he didn't clap his hands for the last part. Months passed. The king watched dancer after dancer and never tired of the music or the dancing. But always, after the dancers and servants left for the evening, the king danced the kokioko by himself so he would not forget it. Well, one evening after working all day, Malice, the king's gardener, was on his way home when he realized that he had forgotten his straw hat. He needed it to protect himself from the bright morning sun, so he returned to the palace. As Malice approached the garden, he heard someone singing the kokioko song. He wondered who could be singing, for the hopeful dancers had already gone home. As Malice came closer, he recognized the king's voice. Malice tiptoed even closer. The king was singing and dancing. Quickly, Malice hid behind a tree and watched the king dance the kokioko in the moonlight. Malice followed the king's every movement with greedy, eager eyes. He did not move. He hardly breathed until the king had finished his dance and gone into the palace. Malice then ran home to show the steps of the kokioko to his wife. Madame Malice was delighted with her clever husband, who explained how he intended to win the 5,000 gourds without even entering the contest. The next morning, Madame Malice woke her husband early, and they ate breakfast as the roosters were crowing. Before going to the palace, Malice went to visit his old friend Bouki. "Bouki," Malice said in a high, sweet voice, "you and I have been friends for years. You've always helped me. Now I want to do something really great for you." "Uh-oh," said Bouki in his low, gruff voice. He had been friends with Malice long enough to know that you were better off before Malice came along. No one was trickier than Malice. "Oh, thank you, Malice," Bouki slowly answered, "but I really don't need any help." "Bouki! Bouki!" Malice could not be stopped. "Do you know what I saw last night? I saw the king dancing the kokioko in his garden. I saw every step he made," Malice continued. "I can't dance it for I'm the king's servant and he would suspect me. But I can teach you the steps and you can win the 5,000 gourds." Now, 5,000 gourds was a lot of money, especially for Bouki, who had many little Boukis to feed. It was also a lot of money for Malice, who had many little Malices. "Show me the dance," said Bouki, forgetting the years of tricks Malice had played on him. Malice danced and sang, "Kokioko, oh samba, now I dance like this." Bouki tried to follow Malice's movements, but he was so fat and awkward he nearly fell over. "Kokioko, oh!" "Never mind," said Malice cheerfully. "I'll be back tonight to teach you. We'll do a little bit every night and you'll learn." 2 months later, Bouki and Malice joined the line of dancers waiting outside the king's palace. When it was Bouki's turn, he went in alone and danced for the king. It was a very fat dancer who danced the kokioko, but it was the kokioko. There was no doubt about it. Bouki had moved his chest, his arms, his hips, had clapped and turned exactly as the king had done. The king was flabbergasted, amazed, stunned, and had no choice but to give Bouki his reward. Bouki rushed joyously out of the palace with his sack of 5,000 gourds. "Malice, I've won, Bouki shouted. Malice and Bouki walked gaily home through the forest. But as they passed a large breadfruit tree, Malice suddenly stopped and said, "Bouki, now that you can do the kokioko, I'm going to teach you one of the easiest dances there is." "Great," said Bouki. Malice moved his rump, shook his head and sang, "If you have no sense, put your sack on the ground and dance." "Oh, that's easy," said Bouki, "especially for someone who knows how to dance." Bouki put his sack on the ground, he moved his rump, shook his head and sang. "Good," said Malice. "Now, faster." Malice closed his eyes, threw his arms in the air and danced and sang faster. "If you have no sense, put your sack on the ground and dance." "Oh, I can do that," Bouki said, and he closed his eyes, threw his arms in the air, shook his whole body, and danced with Malice. Bouki's eyes were shut tight when Madame Malice crept out from behind the fruit tree, the breadfruit tree. Quietly, she picked up Bouki's sack and tiptoed back into the woods as Malice and BOUKI continue to sing, "If you have no sense." A branch in the woods cracked. BOUKI opened his eyes and looked at the ground. His sack was gone. "My sack! Malice, my sack!" "BOUKI, did you put it on the ground?" Malice asked. "Yes, of course I did," said BOUKI. "Oh, BOUKI, no, I tried to warn you," said Malice, and he disappeared into the night, singing, "If you have no sense, put your sack on the ground and dance." The end. Okay, and now I have some unfamiliar words that you may have heard in the story. I want to share the meanings with you. Okay, the first one is BOUKI, and BOUKI is actually a well-known character in Haitian folklore. It is considered an insult in Creole to call another person a BOUKI, which means a dummy. Gourd. The gourd is a standard denomination in Haitian currency. The similarity between the Haitian gourd and the word gourd, meaning a squash-like fruit, is not coincidental. Before paper money was used in Haiti, the calabash, a kind of tropical fruit or gourd, was exchanged for goods. 16 gourds are worth approximately $1. Kokioko. It's an onomatopoeic word, that's a big word as well, that imitates the crowing sound made by a rooster, similar to the American cock-a-doodle-doo. Malice. Malice is a trickster character who frequently appears in Haitian folklore. Because of his insatiable desire to have more for himself, Malice always tries to outwit others. The name derives from the French word malice, meaning evil intention. And the last word is samba. It's a dance of African origin that has a step close pattern. The samba dancer dips and springs upward on each beat to the music. Also a word of African origin meaning lead singer. The samba was often the person who led the singing when groups of farmers worked together, bringing in the harvest. Isn't that interesting? And now that we know more about who BOUKI is, his character, and who Malice is and his character, do you think that, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a friend who came to you that is sort of like Malice, which means, you know, sometimes they're not always forthcoming. They may have lied to you before in the past, but they still want to be friends with you, and they come to you and say, "Hey, I'm going to do something for you." Have you ever fallen for a trick like that? I know I have. When I was a kid, I've fallen for something like that. What do you think the moral of the story was? I think I know, but I'm going to leave that one up to you, and I'll see you next time on AUTHORized.